have to have the courage of our convictions and be proud of being Conservatives again.
So we decided to set up blue-collar conservatism.
Having spent 20 years working for the Royal Mail as a postman, I feel most at home at blue-collar conservatism.
This is about people saying what they want us to do. So it's actually reversing the way politics is being done at the moment.
I'm supporting blue-collar conservatives' campaign for a police cut.
Effects of blue-collar in the last few months has been incredibly positive. The fact that everything we have talked about, like school funding, like more police officers, is either government policy or soon to be government policy probably tomorrow afternoon.
And why not have a drink and celebrate Boris being on New Year's? We'll have to call him now blue-collar Boris.
We believe that the Labour Party does not speak for working people and that this party speaks for working people.
I grew up in South Yorkshire and it's one of those places where you utter the words, I'm a Conservative, and it does kind of feel like something that you shouldn't really admit, but I do, because I'm really proud to be a Conservative.
I cannot wait for constituencies like the North East through blue-collar conservatism to do really, really well.
We can be that blue-collar revolution.
The Tory party is now the Heineken party of politics. It is reaching the parts of the country that other parties cannot reach.
Elected as a blue-collar Conservative from a traditionally Labour seat, a path that many have just followed.
Driving forward a blue-collar Conservative agenda.
Joining our happy throng, it's Brendan, hashtag king of the swingers, the biggest swingers.
But I would say there's another part too, which wasn't covered, which what I would call a kind of blue-collar conservatism.
Myself and other MPs in the blue-collar conservatism group promised during the general election we would be on the side of hard-working families if we got it started.
How many people are brand new to the Conservative Party? That is quite a lot.
The podcast is called Blue Collar Conversations. It came from a series of pub visits. That's where most of my great ideas have come from too.
Make sure we hold some of these seats in by this time.
I hope the blue-collar Conservatives have a fantastic virtual conference this week, and I know it will be fizzing with ideas about how we can change this country for the better. Your group has done so much to champion and fight for the issues that matter to the everyday lives of working people, from education to crime and jobs. And all this chimes so closely with our levelling up agenda. It's why even in the midst of fighting this coronavirus pandemic, we haven't forgotten our promises, and we've been getting on with investing in our schools, hospitals, roads, railways, police, and much more.
Welcome to this, the first Blue Collar Conservatism conference in association with the Daily Express. Blue Collar Conservatism has always been about taking politics to the people, getting outside the Westminster bubble to hear what people really have to say. And during this week, we'll be travelling to Mansfield and Sedgefield, Manchester and Birmingham to hear what is being said on the ground. We'll be talking to local business people, and also local politicians. And at the end of every day, we'll be having a big debate, which we're going to take back to Westminster, make sure that cabinet ministers listen to and get them to respond. What are they doing now? And in light of hearing that debate, what are they going to do next? Oh yes, blue-collar conservatism is turning politics on its head and giving the power back to the people. Thanks for joining us today for day one of our Blue Collar Conservatism conference. We're in the East Midlands. First stop, Mansfield, because that is the place that was the first blue brick in the red wall, and local MP Ben Bradley will be showing us around. We get to meet Fran Bishop, local businesswoman and also the star of the BBC's hit show The Apprentice, and she tells us how tough it is to run a business on the high street. And then we have a debate on education, and it's all about Britain really does have working class talent, a taboo subject for some white working class boys, and why the education system is failing them. But it's not taboo for us. Then join us live at 8 with your opinions, your views on the things that we've talked about today. Email us at opinion@bluecollarconservatism.co.uk or send us your comments on social media using hashtag BCC20.
Well, this place, Mansfield Town Football Club, is a nice kind of metaphor for the whole levelling up agenda. The effort and the investment that this place, Mansfield Town, the Radfords in particular, have put into investing in the community, investing more than just money, although, you know, we've got the new training facilities, we've got, you know, bringing the academy back to West Notts College, but more than that, actually things like, you know, walking football, things like the social investment, the post-16 training and everything else that goes on here. You know, it's the place where, you know, the stands are empty now, but has massive potential, and it's got good people at the top who are trying to do something positive. I feel the same about the rest of the town and about the town centre. You know, there is this big drive now for levelling up, for that investment in places like ours, and it's a massive opportunity to really make something happen.
We all know football clubs play a huge part in every town up and down the land, and that's no different here. I'm new to the area. I live over in Cheshire, and I do the commute every morning, and I know how much this football club means to the town, whether it be a child growing up or a 75-year-old fan who's been coming for 50 years with a season ticket. I know this is their life. On a Saturday, on a Tuesday night, that determines the mood of the whole town, really, whether we win or whether we lose. So yeah, it's huge. Football's played a massive part in my life. My mood swings all depend on football mainly. So, but just the whole. Obviously, at the moment we can't have fans and we can't gather due to the situation. But on a Saturday we have a family stand, we have the community room. It brings people together, which I think football does very well. Not like many other things do, but football does.
The football club is the main the pivot of the community, really. You know, especially on a match day. You know the seats they used to be packed. Obviously, it's a bit different at the moment. But yeah, the football things that the football club do with the great work the footballing community does, going around schools, the players visiting schools. It is the central hub. It's almost like in a religion, really, because you know everybody talks about Mansfield Town Football Club, whether they're somebody at school or in a retirement home. It's it is a big part of the community.
There's a football in the community scheme at every football club, from Premiership right down to National League. We're all roughly the same. Obviously some are bigger and better than others. But here at Mansfield Town, we know over the last few years we've really come on leaps and bounds and developed it. We do a lot of schoolwork, which is the Premier League Primary Stars, which you might have seen advertised on television. We do kicks, we do post-16 education, BTEC, and various other things as well. Football in the community at Mansfield Town has been here since 1990. It originally started off with Dave Bentley, and then John Gannon, and then myself. I think it all started off in 1987 at Manchester City, and then it was successful there, so then they decided to feed it out to all clubs, and you know, not every football club's got one. I think it'll go on forever. So this is our classroom with our post-16 education programme. We've got 16 students doing a BTEC level 2. And there's a teacher, Liz Regan.
As more and more students get more aware of what options are out there, it's nice that we can offer this option with the practical side of playing football every day and the education. It kind of melds really well. And for those who want a smaller environment or a change from a school setting, it's quite nice to come and be in a workplace as well as an educational setting. After being here, does anybody have a feeling that they might want to go to university to continue studying? If you do, put your hands up. Okay, you might not know yet. Anybody considering going on perhaps to do an apprenticeship in sport? Yeah? Anybody considering going into working in the sporting industry, so coaching? Anyone considering coaching in one way or another? Teaching, sports teaching, PE teaching? Yeah, so we've got a real good mix. Anyone think at the end of 2 years they'll be sick of education and just want to go out and earn some money so they can buy a car? No, fair enough.
Well, the other reason to come here to Stags is, sport is a prime example, I think, of one of the other elements where, we haven't quite realised the potential and the importance of it. We have done a really good job, actually, as a government of raising academic standards, and schools across Mansfield have massively improved in terms of educational attainment, passing exams. But there's another element of that to me, and particularly in communities with deprivation, with a lot of kids who, don't get to get out and do things at home. The importance of sport, of art, of creative subjects, and that real rounded education, I think, is massive, as well as the social side of all of that, right? Whether it's the young lads here who aspire to play for Mansfield Town, obviously when we're, champions of whatever, probably the Premier League, and then, or whether it's the over 55s guys down here playing walking football on a Sunday morning, those things are equally important to the kind of levelling up to and dealing with some of the social challenges that we have across the whole area with real deprivation, some of the most, some of the poorest people in the country. There's a lot more to the whole piece on levelling up and education than just passing exams, I think. One of the big things, obviously, through the election and the big challenges, priorities for government is this levelling up agenda, hugely important for places like here because, typically whether it's investment, whether it's kind of state of average wages or jobs and the kind of things we've got going on here, huge challenges, and we need to catch up with some of the rest of the country. It's kind of similar across lots of the red wall kind of seats that we won in the election. So we've been really driving for the previous Parliament as well. I was lucky enough to work in MHCLG where we're coming up with kind of town deals and future high streets funds, and Mansfield's got 51 million quid, which can make a huge difference to this place.
I mean, it used to be like Chesterfield one was. You could walk down and one get every single item you wanted. And you got to know everybody and they knew you, and you were like a friend, we were all friends everywhere.
I think Mansfield's becoming a ghost town, It used to be so busy and vibrant, and it's just not, whether it's people shopping online and that. I'm a dinosaur, I don't do online. My boys do it for me.
How do you draw footfall into the town centre? How do you drag people in to come and support the shops? But you're going to have to do it with a more diverse offer. It's not just going to all be retail. Retail's found it really challenging, hasn't it, frankly, and even more so post-COVID. So how do we bring in services? How do we bring in leisure businesses? We're talking to our council about, selling up their big civic centre in their out-of-town site and drawing all of that into here, into one of these big empty department stores. We've got Beals that closed last year. We've got BHS up there, like some big spaces you're not going to fill with retail, which I think is a game changer, actually. If you start to, rather than send people to out-of-town retail parks, drag everybody into the town centre for everything that they need. It's the future of the high street as far as I can see, because I don't see how the trends of online shopping kind of reverse.
Maybe have a bit more variety, trying it. I'm not sure you can dictate who hires shops and who doesn't, but a bit more variety. I'm originally from Manchester, so I'm used to like your big city centres rather than this. To me is quite tame.
I think what we need is market stalls to be a lot cheaper to rent, because that's where people start their shopping business, to build up to able to go and buy a shop on High Street, because what they need to do is start something small, and that's what they do.
The rents are too high for most of the people who rent the shops. That's why they're closing down. Online's okay if they're all youngsters who live in that place. Well, you look round here, there's people walking by. How many youngsters do you see? Not very many in this area. It's mostly middle-aged and elderly people around Mansfield. And not many are online. I've never been online. If someone wanted to get me a computer and thing, I said, well, at 82-year-old, what would I do online? Yeah, no, Marks and Spencer's my shop.
Very good. Sometimes you speak to people and they'll go, why would anyone want to come to Mansfield? Which is easy to say, but you look at the map of all the attractions within 5 or 6 miles of here, from Hardwick Hall to the Major Oak and Sherwood Forest and everything else that comes with it. Loads going for us, so that money actually can be a real game changer. You need to keep driving it through, keep pushing government, make sure we get it, and then get a bit more on the other side of it as well, hopefully. So what would help make sure you've got the football in your business? What drives people in?
I don't really have the answer to that question. Sorry, my darling, bless you.
Okay, no problem. You're in your way, sorry.
Do you want to come in on it? It is car payment, is that alright? Bless you, thank you. I think the thing that puts people off coming into town centres at the moment is the antisocial kind of side of it. The people just hanging around and the homelessness. It is, to be fair, when we first reopened, there was a lot of homeless people sort of hanging around and causing issues, but that as people have sort of migrated back into the town centre, that's disappeared a bit. There's a lot more police, a lot more sort of the big team, and the town centre wardens are doing an amazing job. They sort of liaising with us every turn, so yeah, that's, I think when that sort of migrates away, people will sort of come back more.
Comes here, you can walk around the town centre, you walk around twice and you see 2 cops, and just one, so we're out here. And you can't beat local people.
Everyone has this thing about the market, right? Because it's what people used to have. We used to have a thriving market, we're a market town. It's a real challenge. I mean, if you look up here at these buildings, it's beautiful. There's a monument in the middle of town hall, but really nice buildings. You kind of got this challenge of wanting to support the market and grow traders, but then you could do more with this space, right? And have this really nice, almost like a piazza where you can come and sit and drink and eat and socialise. The opportunity is there. We just need to kind of reimagine what we want to do with the place.
Hello, my name's Lee Anderson. I'm the Member of Parliament for Ashfield and Eastwood. Now, when I was a child growing up in Ashfield, we had aspirations. Obviously, it was either take the 11 plus or go and get a job down the pit with your dad and your granddad. Now, just a few years before I was due to take my 11 plus and hopefully go to grammar school, that was taken away by the Labour government at the time. So I only had one choice, and that was to go and work down the pits. Now, it may not seem like much of an aspiration, but nevertheless it was an aspiration. I'd seen my dad go to work for many years. Every morning I used to watch him go to work, and I knew that if I wanted the nice things in life, a house, a car and a holiday once a year, that's what I had to do. But unfortunately, we fast forward 40 odd years, and it's sometimes difficult for young people in a place like Ashfield to see that clear path, a clear vision to where they want to be. Now, it's all well and good. Some people may want to go to university, and that's good if they want to learn a profession, but not every young man or every young woman wants to go to university. But they don't walk past the pits, they don't walk past the factories, they don't walk past the mills, they don't walk past the places of work which I used to walk by 40 odd years ago. So it was a clear path for me. I knew where I was going, but for these young people it's a little bit more difficult. So as the MP for Ashfield, I need to make sure that I work with schools, colleges, training providers and young people to make sure that every young person in Ashfield with an aspiration gets to go to the place where they want to be, to make sure that they realise all their ambitions and to make sure that they get the nice things in life like I've had over the past few years. So that's what I want to do. That's it.
Hi, I'm Fran Bishop and I am from the Pud store. We currently have 4 high street stores and we have just recently expanded into an online warehouse based in my house, so that's great. We stock clothing from birth to age 14 and we also do nursery hardware goods. Pud has been in Mansfield now exactly 2 years next week, so we're celebrating our 2-year anniversary. The central pillar of any good business locally is community, and I know it's sort of become a buzzword that might lose meaning, but community for me is about knowing your neighbour, it's about knowing the shopkeeper next door, it's about that support network as opposed to just saying, oh, we're a community business. to do that, you have to really mean to do that. So for me, that means sticking by certain values. I will support the school raffle. I will support local charities. We will do fundraising events if we need to. Like I say, if kids come in and you know, there's an event or something that we can support and add to and really add value, that's where, you know, my business comes in. Then as a business owner, I think I have a social responsibility to people around me to make their lives better if I can, because they're spending their hard-earned money within my business, and the least that I can do is respect that. I must get 2-3 young adults a week email me asking, can they come into the shop, or can they have a Saturday job, or can they just come in and ask how we started a business. And the answer always is yes. Even if we don't have a Saturday role, or even if there isn't a job going at the moment, come in, speak to us. I'll explain exactly how we built the business. I go into quite a lot of schools and explain, the basic economics of a business, but also the heart behind it, of having that resilience and that want and need to achieve more. I dropped out of university, so I was not a success story. I got pregnant really, really young. I got married very young, and a lot of people wrote me off. And I think it's important to go back to your roots and where you come from and say, okay, well, how can we make your life better? How can we give you more opportunity? I was a typical example of a person that was like a square peg round hole. I was straight A's, and school said, okay, you need to go to university. That was not me. I was a hands-on person. I should have been put into an apprenticeship. So now that's why I've got this real passion for young people to say, okay, you need to learn on the job. You want to go, you need to upskill. You need to go into businesses and learn, and the more that you speak to people, the more about life in general you'll learn, and then maybe 10-15 years down the line you'll have your own business. But it is, I think, business owners have got this real responsibility to give back to the next generation, because if not, who's going to create the next entrepreneurs? So obviously during the pandemic we had to do everything and adapt overnight. Obviously, it was common knowledge that at one point couriers were so busy that they were taking longer than normal to deliver goods. Now, when you're selling prams and car seats and a woman goes into labour and they need that pram the next day, we couldn't afford the 5 working day wait. So I was literally driving to the warehouse where these prams are kept and driving around the country in my enterprise van at the height of the pandemic to be able to deliver these so that babies could actually come home safely from hospital. And I think that, again, that's what businesses, there's so many examples of that, but so many businesses have gone above and beyond during this pandemic. They're the ones that really, really deserve to succeed.
So you're talking about your kind of education and how maybe didn't go quite in the right direction. You had to kind of rethink, should have maybe done something else, an apprenticeship, more hands-on. One of the things that I think government's trying to drive as well is this shift away from just shoving every kid into university when we know they're not getting the outcomes. But actually, how do you do something more practical, more work-based with real outcomes at the end of it? And I've seen examples of young guys in Mansfield who have maybe not been getting on at school. Feel like they might drop out and end up with nothing, who have then found that thing, whether it is starting a business or sport or something that just makes them think it's worth me learning and sticking with it.
I think a lot of it comes down from the government may have to drive a campaign to break down stigma, because I think that sometimes there's this stigma attached to doing an apprenticeship or doing a BTEC or doing a trade course, when actually they're really, really good professions to do, and we have such a skills gap and a shortage in that. But I think that there's almost this mantra, oh, well, no, I've done this, so I need to go to university. And, sometimes I think that we get pigeonholed into these areas which aren't necessarily right for us. And I think a lot of that's got to come from the education side from 14 instead of 16. I'd say from 14 to 18, of just planting that seed in young people's minds of going, now's the time to think about what you want to do, not when you're 16. Yeah. Why not think at 14? Okay, why not encourage that Saturday job mentality that we probably had when we were growing up? Why did that suddenly stop? Because I think there's so many small businesses out there that are happy to employ young people below the age of 16. And I think that then if you can introduce them into not the world of work, I'm not saying work 20 hours a week, but even just 2-3 hours a week, even if it's a volunteering role, it just gives them, it broadens their horizons to do more. For me, because I was so educationally, I did well, they said university, whereas as you know, I like just talking to people.
So,
yeah, so it's fine. But you have to, You have to learn to read people properly, I think, and I think that sometimes careers advisors need to really get to know the person, not just look at grades on a piece of paper.
To understand the workplace as well, right? You hear all the time about I employed this great graduate who knew nothing about work, being at work and how to get on in work. Whereas if you had that Saturday job since you were, I'm glad you said 14, because I keep saying to all sorts of people, why is it we've got this big push behind FE and vocational training post 16?
Yeah, it's not.
But it still seems to be something that is perceived in a really negative way if you're 14 or 15 and you want to go and do that. And I think that's got to change personally.
I mean, I got my first job when I was at 14, and I was a waitress in a crazy Spanish restaurant, and it was a case of you do what everyone else does, you want to get no special treatment. But it was really good because when I got that little brown envelope of my pay packet on a Sunday afternoon of £50 for working 2 shifts, like I was like, oh my God, I need to spend this now. And it's that again, but again, this is where it comes down to then learning a life skill of how to manage money, the value of money and the value of hard work. Like, these are really core principles that I think that we need to ingrain back into society and make young people proud that they're going to work and show off about that.
Absolutely. And on the high street then, so we were talking a little bit before about your business, retail, some of the challenges in retail. What about the high street more generally? Because if you know, businesses moving online, people shopping online, what do we need to do? We've got 50 million quid, right, in Mansfield. What should we do with that money that draws those people back into town, that can make sure there's the footfall here doing other things so they still come into your shop? What are those other things? What is it we need to deliver?
First of all, stuff like this is good instead of spending a ridiculous amount of money on consultations and plans and marketing forecasts, because that frustrates a business owner like me. When you see it, you know, through the Freedom of Information Act, you see it and you go, they spent £30,000 on like a consultation. I could have just told them that. That's the first thing, is going around and speaking to business owners like you are. It's maybe then creating a panel of key business owners in the area and saying, okay, where are we falling short? Because through conversation, more ideas are bounced off each other to start with. It's then repurposing all these empty units and making sure that landlords, business owners and government are singing from the same hymn sheet. So obviously, as we know, business rates are not being paid until next April. The biggest question on my mind now, from stopping me signing and renewing my lease, is that, well, what's going to happen in April to the business rates? If I know that they're going to be turnover based, fantastic, great, because we all have to pay our way, we all have to pay our taxes. I'm not asking for no business rates. What I'm asking for is that system gets overhauled. Once you do that, then you're going to get more units full, because business owners will have more confidence, they'll know what's going on. Landlords will then be more susceptible to doing deals. Obviously there's great incentives already in Mansfield, but then it's kind of getting the market, I think there's getting a buzz around the market again with various different stores being there, and also looking at the use of retail stores, because this is one of my biggest frustrations. In an area, if you've got a 200-yard area, if you've got 4 beauticians there, they're all vying for the same business, and this is the biggest frustration I have. There should be, if somebody takes a retail unit, there should be an application of planning and consent through the landlord, not just to let that out, but to allow for what that purpose is going to be. Because I think a lot of time high streets are filled with either charity shops, pound shops, and the public become frustrated with that. Whereas if you spread them out, you can then repurpose the retail landscape to have proper anchor stores and then a variety of retail causes. But what that also means is you can use that money to then do a call out and say, well, actually, does anybody want to open a new homeware store in Mansfield? Because this is what we need. That then fills the gap. Then suddenly you've got a really great bustling high street again.
Something I've never seen actually is, you know, we are desperate for
there you go.
Clothing retailer and somebody come in. Yeah.
But this is the thing, because then you might have an entrepreneur, to then think back to the skills gap, you might have an entrepreneur that then is really thinking about wanting to do that. Is there a need? I don't know. That's going to stop me from doing that. Not everybody like me is going to go and open a shop and just pray for the best, okay? Not everyone's going to do that, okay? But if the local council, local government are saying we need this gap filling, then suddenly you are pleasing the public, you're pleasing the business owner, you're pleasing the landlord, and because there was already a need, that I guarantee that business has probably got 300 times more chance to succeed than just filling it with another charity shop.
I came to Mansfield about 1980s. I've been about 40 years now in Mansfield. It was a very thriving town. I remember them days where the market stall was so busy that I had to hold my parents' hand just in case I get lost. And they had everything from lingerie to curtains to everything that you could buy that you needed. But in the number of years I've seen it decline, and the way the internet's coming up now, where people are going shopping online, the high streets are really suffering big time. Day-to-day basis, we tend to see the shops boarding up. Now with this COVID, we've seen the businesses one by one now it was shutting down. It's just unbelievable. Even ourselves as a taxi driver, it has a major effect on us. I mean, since the lockdown service, people not going to work. Obviously, we're just stuck on the taxi rank, waiting. To be honest, it was that bad for us to survive. The other drivers we were working 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours a day just to make ends meet. We had no choice. At the end of the day, we've still got mortgages to pay, bills to pay. It's okay the government saying that have a holiday mortgage break, or have a break on your bills. At the end of the day, we still got to pay that. They've managed to pull the plug and say, nobody go out, they've destroyed my business. I've actually lost 95% of my business. I wasn't even sleeping. Me and my wife and my family were concerned what was going to happen to us. If there is no lockdown, I don't know what we're going to do. I've been working as a taxi driver for just over 10 years now. It's difficult to get into another job. At the end of the day, family comes first. It means giving up the job and finding something else. But at the end of the day, we've got to find something that has got to make us pay our bills still as we are now. But there's no point changing job and still suffer. But we just have to wait and see now what's going to happen.
Hi, I'm Brendan Clark-Smith. I'm the newly elected Member of Parliament for Bassetlaw since December 2019, and we're out today in Carlton and Lindrick in my patch, and we're delivering these reporting back leaflets to show everything that we've been trying to do for the area. Now, we want to show that when you elect the Conservatives in what used to be the red wall, or the blue wall as we like to call it now, we can affect some real positive change. So I think one of the problems we've had in areas such as mine is that people constantly dragging the place down. So we've had people saying that the hospital is going to be closing for probably the last 30-40 years. Not true. We've had a high streets which have been in some fairly serious decline. We want to really halt that. Also, we're looking at schools. We've come on leaps and bounds in the last few years. We've got outstanding schools now thanks to our Academies programme. And we want to say that with Conservative MPs, we can actually start being really positive about our areas and driving forward some progress. So, some of the good stuff that's happening in Bassetlaw. We've got a multi-million, 15-16 million quid going into our local hospital for an upgrade, which is going to be fantastic for us. So this means children are going to be able to come in at night again, not have to go all the way to Doncaster. So that's one of the first things. But we're looking at education, as I mentioned. We're going to have a university campus right in the heart of Worksop Town Centre. And that's going to bring the footfall in, it's going to help our town centres, and it's also going to breathe a bit of life. One of the things as well with areas like this is when people get their qualifications, they move on. Because those high-skilled jobs are either not here or they go to places like Sheffield or places like Nottingham. But we want to keep them here, and we want to keep those skilled people. We want them to raise families here, and we want to say that this area is such a great place to live in. So I'm certainly proud to represent here. We want to make sure that it's Conservative for the foreseeable future, and we think here, Nottinghamshire and the rest of the country, we can effect some really positive change.
This is the Sir John Cockle pub in Mansfield, a favourite haunt of mine. We spent a lot of time here in the 2017 election. The story is quite interesting. It goes back to like the industrial past of Mansfield. The King came up here and needed somewhere to stay. He stayed with the miller. This used to be a mill here, John Cockle, and out of his kind of gratitude, knighted the miller, hence the Sir John Cockle pub as it now stands. And the landlady here, Elaine, was really kindly went and convinced their brewery to put on a Ben Bradley MP English Pale Ale, which just literally made my life. It was amazing, and they sold it here on the bar with a Blue Rosette Ben Bradley MP Ale for 2 years, 2.5 years.
Because he's the best MP we've ever had in Mansfield. He's done more for Mansfield than any other MP that we've ever had. And he mentioned the cockle in his opening speech in Parliament.
I just think Mansfield has a huge amount of potential. The geographical location in the heart of Sherwood Forest and all the history that comes with that, and the brand that everybody around the world recognises of Robin Hood and Sherwood Forest, is something we can tap into and make the most of. Obviously, I'm a member of Parliament and this is my interest, right? Education. I sat on the Education Select Committee, dug into all of those inquiries and lots of discussions with the DFE, which are really, really interesting policy-wise. But as a person, you know, you value those experiences. So I've got young children, they're primary age, 6 and 4, and I'm starting to think, you know, they're developing what they want to do already, you know, what their interests are. Where are they going to go through our school system? Do I want them to go to university? You know, I did, and it was not right for me in some cases, right for me in others. I got there in the end, having messed around and done different things. But in my own life, you know, I experienced different kinds of education. I went to, you know, a normal primary school, I went to an independent school, I went to a state school, I went to 3 different universities over the course of a few years, and have had really different experiences, done well and done badly at different places depending on you know, what the atmosphere was like, what the support was like and what I needed. I think the same is for all kids. You know, I broadly think that education is horses for courses. One size does not fit all, and that actually if we can, you know, allow children to follow their interests in particular, then education becomes a lot more engaging. Over the course of today, we've seen different elements of Mansfield's regeneration, you know, at the start of Mansfield's regeneration, but the town centre is a hub for business, it's a hub for our community, and I think all of that feeds through the other things we need to level up as well, education being the key for me. We've spoken to different businesses about the nature of how things have changed for them through COVID and how they need to regenerate the town. But Fran Bishop also talks about the skills element, where she's drawing in people from schools and accessing apprenticeships, how that's going to work for them in the future. I think that's really important. If we're going to find meaningful work, if we're going to support local businesses that will grow our economy, that all ties together quite neatly actually in terms of what it is we need to deliver. The Prime Minister's the first to say that ability is equally spread around the country, opportunity is not. So let's give opportunity, let's give incentives for businesses to move here. Post-COVID, that maybe is easier than ever in terms of not needing to be in a big city anymore. But then let's make sure that our young people have got the skills they need to take those opportunities. For me, that means more of a focus on work-based learning, on technical skills, on apprenticeships and FE. I hope that's what we'll discuss in the debate a little bit later on, feed that back into government. But you know, I don't think it's out there to suggest that actually a big part of the levelling up agenda has got to be skills.
Hello everyone, really pleased to be doing this for the Blue Collar Group, which is such an important voice in the Conservative Party and is having massive amount of influence on government. Most important thing for Blue Collar Britain, something I deeply care about, is education and skills. We know that there is a lot of people from white working classes, from disadvantaged backgrounds, who have a much lower attainment compared to many other cohorts. That's wrong. Attainment in general between disadvantaged groups and their better off peers can reach 18 months by the time pupils get to GCSE. And of course, something that I care about deeply is apprenticeships. We need to build an apprenticeship and skills nation. I want the Prime Minister to genuinely offer an apprenticeship guarantee to every single young person from level 2 right up to degree level. I want to see 50% of students doing degree apprenticeships. These are higher apprenticeships. It's a no-brainer. You earn while you learn. You have no debt, and you get a good job at the end. I want more support for further education colleges, for vocational training, for university technical schools that students go and learn. Those are the things that will really make a difference to young people to blue collar Britain, and get young people climbing that ladder of opportunity, the cost of living, affordable housing, and transforming education and skills in our country. Good luck to the Conservative Blue Collar Group. Thank you.
Well, it's great to be here at West Nottinghamshire College in the constituency of Mansfield. And what a tale Mansfield has to tell, because really this is the seat where the red wall began to crumble back in 2017. And it really was the start of the political change across the country. What was the country saying, though? Was it saying we want to do things differently? And in a seat like Mansfield, the first time ever it had turned blue, it has now got a majority of 16,000. Yes, that means that the MP is absolutely embedded in the local community, and we must be talking about what the people here truly want. Now, everybody in this room is concerned about education, social mobility, and what are the opportunities for the next generation of young people. And Ben, always in the House, talks about white working class lads left behind. But we've got some other MPs here too. We've got Lee Rowley and North East Derbyshire. We've got Lee Anderson from Ashfield. We've got Amanda Soloway from Derby North, and we've got Brendan Clark-Smith from Bassett Law. And the rest of the room is filled with people who in one way or another are making lives better in education, in business, and looking at future opportunities. But Ben, starting with you, why is it then that you think that young white lads feel disengaged? Is that the number one issue? And how do we solve it?
Thanks, Esther. I think it's a massive question. Thank you, everybody, for giving up your time to come and get involved in this. I think it's a really important subject for us overall in terms of the levelling up agenda. I think skills and training and education is a massive part of that, and it's those, statistically, those white working class lads that fall at the bottom of all of those kind of targets and exam results and education and attainment across the board. You know, there's a bigger question about identity politics there, and what's you know the right way to approach this and the right way to bring it forward. But all of the data tells us that the most disadvantaged children from communities like Mansfield or Ashfield or Bassett Law, or, you know, a number of those represented around the room, are the ones that need the most help from that perspective. So the thing that I try and raise in Parliament over and over again, I guess I use the phrase white working class boys just to kind of dive into this identity politics debate sometimes. It feels like unless you use that kind of narrative, that it doesn't get heard a lot of the time. I'm not necessarily...
But those are the facts. Those are the figures. So it's not like you're talking about it and it's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, there is obviously something going on there.
And I think it comes down to a lot of things. I guess interested in all of your thoughts on this, but it comes down, I think, to a cultural thing in some of these kind of working class communities. What's that home environment like? You know, parents who haven't gone kind of far in education in terms of higher education, university, not necessarily the same goals and aspirations. And then also an element of, you know, the social life. So if you're a young lad who, you know, maybe hasn't got the same things to go and do out there in the community anymore, maybe that youth service has disappeared, maybe that football club's gone under, whatever it may be, and you're not quite sure what to do anymore. There are lots of incentives to go in the wrong direction and get involved in the wrong thing. And I think as educators, as you know, different groups in society, whether that be youth groups or the Scouts or, you know, some of the other guys we've got represented in this room, there's a big social role there in terms of bringing people back into learning and education. And then arguably the most important thing, I think, for me is around our schooling and how we convince these guys and girls, because it's not just guys, although statistically, there's a difference, but it applies equally to both. What's the thing that makes them engage with learning? When these kids are sat in their lessons going, what is the point of this? Why am I at school? Why am I bothering to turf myself out of bed every morning and come in? How do we make it relevant? And you hear all these stories all the time. I've met people in Mansfield as I've been out and about where they've said, I'm struggling at school, I'm going to drop out with no GCSEs. But then actually, I've been to do day release in the salon at West Knox College, and I've really enjoyed it. And that's been the thing that's made me go, right, actually, I want to go and learn, and I want to do something differently. I want to engage with this now. The stereotype is always, lads and boxing, isn't it? And what's that thing that gets you focused and disciplined and wanting to learn? But there are lots of examples to that. So I guess my question to you guys on this is, where do you fit in that, and what? Because you're all from different backgrounds and thoughts here on how that works. But what are those things that we can do, that we can add and change, that make some of the most disadvantaged kids that aren't getting the best out of the system actually want to kind of engage and to learn?
So what is the situation round here with schools, and how do you turn a failing school round, and what maybe are the key reasons that a school fails?
It's a really good question, a lot of questions. Schools fail for a variety of different reasons, a variety of different factors that are associated with school decline. I think one of the things that is certainly true of white working class is that aspirations are very, very low. And as somebody that's a white working class kid myself from the northeast of England, it is challenging, and I think you need to educate a generation. It's not just about the children, it's about the parents. So my parents didn't want me to go to university, not because they weren't aspirant, it's because they didn't understand. They talk about getting things on tick, and it is a huge thing for a white working class kid to be saddled with in excess of £30,000 worth of debt. It's really, really challenging. So you need to kind of educate parents as well as children.
So whilst the numbers don't necessarily agree with that, we'll see lots of children from the deprived areas more than ever before going to university. But what you're saying there is, although they might be going, and they are going in numbers, their family aren't supportive maybe, or aren't pushing them along that way?
Well, it didn't put me off. I had to have a really challenging conversation with my parents, because that was actually fundamentally what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to kind of educate, and I had to kind of convince my parents that that was the right thing for me to do. And I think the white working class conundrum is really interesting, and I think that it's nobody kind of grasps the nettle because it's a little bit uncomfortable. But white working class children need cultural capital as well. So one of the things that's really interesting is the stats about the children that start university then drop out. And they drop out because they don't have the cultural capital to be able to kind of coexist in a university lifestyle. So we've certainly got children that go off to Oxbridge, children that go off to Oxford University, Cambridge University. 85% of our children graduate from Brunts Academy and go on to Russell Group universities. But one of the things that we noticed when we were doing our research is that some of our children dropped out because they lacked this cultural capital. So things like going to Oxford or Cambridge, they have societies, things like fencing, debating, and that is something that people from Mansfield don't necessarily have access to. So when we're talking about education, I think we need to be talking about education in its broadest sense, not just about pure academics, but also the social and life skills that students and young people need going on into the future. And I think there needs to be a real grown-up and mature conversation around qualifications and what it is that we value. And we have students incredibly academic, very, very clever, but lack the skills that may necessarily get them employed. So they're very, very bright, will leave us with a string of grades 8s and 9s, will go on to university and potentially get a first-class honours degree, but don't necessarily have the social skills and we have very strong links with businesses, and they're sort of saying that our children are not work ready.
Yeah, and okay, well, I'm going to come to Lewis, though, on the first point that you raised, and this is this, do I feel I'm ready for Oxford University? Will I be one of those people who drop out because I don't feel confident or has that social capital? Is what Claire's saying, does that ring true at all with you? What are you concerned about?
Well, I think the thing is that concerned me is that not many people in our local area do end up going to Oxbridge, and more do end up going to Russell Group universities, but I'd be the first to end up to go to Oxford. And while I did attend Unique Summer School, which normalised the stigma around Oxford and things like that, I still feel anxious about possibly going to a university like Oxford, because I come from this working class background. Someone from Sutton in Ashfield going to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge is unheard of, and you think, will there be a stigma around me because I come from that deprived area?
Well, I'm going to bring somebody in who was the first from their family to go to university. He too went to Oxford University, and he's now an MP, the MP for North East Derbyshire. So, Lee, is this making sense to you? Did you have these same concerns?
Well, I'm sat here, I've got slight chills just listening to your... sorry, I'm sat here and I've got slight chills just listening to you. 21 years ago, this month, I was exactly in your place, just about 20 miles that way in Chesterfield, where I grew up. I'm the first person from my family to go to university straight from school. My mum did night school, but first person from my family to go straight from school. My dad's a milkman. My two grandparents went down the pit. And I had no intention of going to Oxford. It was just, as I got further and further through school, that they encouraged me, and I applied, and I had no idea whether I'd get there, and I was lucky enough to get in. It is the most fantastic, amazing place, but also it took me the best part of a year to really get to grips with the place, and there were lots of phone calls, which you're not going to have, because I could never have stood up at your age and asked those great questions. So you're much further ahead than me, but the first year was really difficult. I remember ringing my mum and my dad and my grandma up, going, I'm struggling here, you know, there is just some confidence that comes from some backgrounds, which I didn't have at 19 and I didn't have at 18. But then when you get about a year and a half in, you realise that the confidence is all nonsense. You're all the same. Everybody, you know, has the same anxieties, the same hopes, the same aspirations, the same abilities. And one of the things, reason why I'm in politics is because it's important that kids and students from places like ours get to those universities, but equally get to the Russell Group if that's where they want to go, or get down the vocational route, because that's just the opportunities they need. And it's so important that we raise aspirations and ambitions in our part of the world, because I don't think necessarily it's all about the model of education which you deliver, as important as it is, and you were talking about exams and things like that. It's about what's going on in here, and it's about making sure that whatever you want to achieve, you actually go out there and do it. And that's a mindset thing. That's a thing that's got to change. And my grandparents wouldn't have dreamed of going to university and wouldn't have had the opportunity. My parents didn't go to university, but they wanted me and my brother to go. And we took that opportunity. But that's the thing that government's got to do. That's the thing that society's got to do. It's got to make sure that whatever your capability, whatever your ability, wherever you want to go, you have the opportunity to reach that. So massive luck, because you are going to enjoy it and it's going to be wonderful. One of the things which, I've got 5 schools in my constituency, and one of the things which I'm really proud of a number of my schools doing is that they're encouraging people to come in and talk about the opportunities that are out there, whatever industry, whatever background, whatever education. My old school is doing Futures Friday, where people come in, old pupils come in and talk about what they've achieved and where they've gone and all this. And it's about that aspiration, and it's about making sure people know that they can achieve those kind of things, which is so important.
Can I bring in Gary Jordan, because local businessman, but you're part of the Ashfield Mansfield 2020 business group, and it's all about going into schools and trying to light that excitement within the pupils, to tell them what are the jobs that are out there and maybe a career they'd want to pursue, and also making it relevant. Once you know what it is that you want to do and the job you want to go for, all of a sudden that could light your excitement to actually even study.
Yeah, I think we're missing a trick in terms of the business and academia links. I try very hard to get into a lot of our local schools, and we have enterprise advisors who work with us, and we fall against the old stumbling blocks that we've got the Ofsted matrix we've got to work to. They're very busy, they're educationally planned what they're going to do, and we've got to break this cycle. For me, we should be looking at, I've been asking for 1 day a term. It's a business day. 1 day curriculum change where it's for vocational, life skills, business type skills. Get people doing things that they need to do. I'm not saying education is taboo. I'm saying that education for education's sake, it annoys a lot of the business people. It was mentioned earlier on about business talking about, are you work ready? We need to get people work ready. So I think there's a curriculum change need. I think there's a need for a once a term business day or work experience day, which will lead us to more meaningful work experiences. Then I like to see something like a summer break when kids take their exams. There's a void, 6, 7, 8 weeks before they're either going back to school or they're going on to college, to Andrew's team, or going on to university, or even going to work. Why is that not a summer work experience, a summer boot camp where businesses come in and actually get you work ready, get you environmentally ready, get you mentally ready, building things like managing money, the resilience, the ability to understand you can fail in life. Kids come out of school very clever. It's been said before from the Evolve Trust people. We've got some very bright kids, but a lot of them just aren't life ready. And that comes down, I think, personally, I was born in Yorkshire, moved to the northeast, so I've been in these kind of environments, then nearly 50 years in Nottinghamshire, and I've seen the demise of the mines. The industry brought about communities and community spirits, but it never elevated us to the levels we should have been going to, because there's a certain skill level, highly skilled in the mining industry, but it was a skill level. If we're going to do something different, yes, educate the kids, not train them, educate the kids highly, but let's do what we need for this community. So talk to the business, what are the business needs, what are we going to aspire to as businesses for the next 10 years, and then make sure that school accommodates that. And it's a journey for me from primary with business, transition through to secondary, talking about some kind of boot camp arrangement, get into the higher and further education.
I think, Lee Anderson, we should bring you in here. You are somebody who came to this college. You did apprenticeships in coal mining. That's what it was. That's what you then went to do, and now you're an MP. So you, going back to what Lee Rowley said, it was about a mindset. You knew what you wanted to do, off you went, but you've managed to progress during your career into something very, very different.
Very different, Esther. So I guess when I was a young man coming to this college back in the 1980s, there was a sort of a clear path for young people, something you could physically see, and that was, they went into the pits, you went into the factory, or if you was a young girl, you probably went into hairdressing or beauty or something like that. You could physically see the pits as you walked around this area, drove around this area. But I think now there's not something physical that young people can see where they think, well, that's what I'm going to do. And that's quite sad, actually, when you think we've got places like Kingsmill Hospital, for example, big employer, probably employs about 5,000 or 6,000 people, some great careers there, but young people go by that every single day and never think to themselves, I want a career in the NHS. And why is that? I don't know. Why is that? Because young people, there are lots of opportunities out there, but like I say, they cannot physically see them opportunities. And that's where we need to join this thing up. We need to join up the colleges, we need to join up the employers, the business people, and make sure that these young people, because just remember, some of these young people in an area like Ashfield or Mansfield or Bassetlaw or Bolzer, they come from workless households, a lot of these young people do. There's third generation where they've never seen one of the parents go to work, and that's as a result of what probably happened 20, 30 years ago. So for me, it was easy back in the 70s and 80s. I used to wake up every morning at 5 o'clock, hear my dad's alarm go off, hear him making his cup of tea, make the fire, so it was warm for us getting up, with no central heating, And then he'd go to the pit, and I used to wave at him through the window at about 5:30 in the morning. He was going to the pit. And I knew when I got to leaving school, that's where I was going. And that wasn't really much of a great aspiration, but I knew I had to go to work. I know I had to go to work to buy things, to have a car, to have nice things, to have a family. But we seem to have lost that over the past couple of decades, where young people don't have that aspiration and they can't physically see what they have to do or where they can go to earn a decent wage and have a nice life. And that upsets me, and that's why I've got involved in politics, and that's why I want to be a good MP, working with people like Andrew and Ben and Lee and Brendan and Amanda and yourself, as to make sure that young people and these people come together to make sure that we don't waste another generation.
I think this is a really important point, Esther. Sorry, that we, as soon as we started talking about aspiration at the beginning, it went university.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's kind of wrong. And actually, as kids who want to go to university, who aspire to go and do that, that's really important, that they have the opportunity wherever they come from to go and do that. But this is the other element, isn't it? You go back to like what Lee's talking about when he was a kid. There was a purpose, right? So what I want to go, I know what I'm going to do, and it might not be something that some academic in London says is aspirational, but actually there's a purpose to what I want to go and do, and I understand it, and I know where I'm going to go. Where's the balance between those things? Because actually, I think part of the thing about why don't we look at the NHS here, the biggest employer, and say that's a massive, huge career opportunity for us, is because there is this drive to go, where am I going to go to university? If I'm not going to university, have I kind of failed a little bit? And I kind of see that as the college's role, and you're probably a good person to talk about this.
But yeah. Also, I was going to say there, I think, and particularly when I was growing up, this ability to appreciate everybody for what job they did seemed to disappear, because all of a sudden there was this set target that 50% of people had to go to university because that was the only route to go. And you didn't look at if you look at a house, it is just as important that the foundations are right and the roof is right and the plumbing and the electricity works, as it is that somebody conveys it properly for you and the bank and the money move around. And I think we forgot that as a society. It was just go to university, which was wrong and has put us on the wrong track for a long period of time. And with that, let's be honest, I think there's been snobbery. You're good if you do this, and maybe you're not if you don't do that, and that is absolutely wrong. Andrew?
You're right, and there's a middle-class mindset that we have to try and change here. And I have this argument in my own kitchen with my own wife. We've got 2 teenage daughters, and in her head, they're going to stay at school, they're going to do A-levels, they're going to go to university, and they're going to be a lawyer. I'm trying to say there's a whole world of other opportunities that don't involve...
Who's winning at the moment? Who's winning?
She is, inevitably. But hopefully the kids will make the decision in the end, not either of us. We'll advise them and help them keep doors open. But I think we need to help young people really understand the opportunities and keep those doors open for them. Over the last 10 years, I say school curriculum, not through the fault of schools, but through political decisions, has narrowed and narrowed and narrowed. More and more young people, by the time they reach us, have fallen out of love with education. And this, I think, is the big point. Yeah.
They've fallen out of love with education because they don't maybe see the purpose of why they're doing it and why they need to do it.
But the opportunity to find something you're good at. My brother, I went to school, I was academic, I loved maths, I loved learning about Pope and history and all of that, I loved it. My brother hated all of that. He went to school for PE and metalwork and woodwork. And if those subjects hadn't existed in our school, he would have been one of those failed kids. As it was, he left school, became a cabinet maker, flourished in a really good vocational career. Those opportunities in our schools now are less and less and less. Not for the fault of the school, because that's where they're driven, because progress measures and EBAC and all the judgments that we make about what's valuable and what's not. So broadening that school curriculum again would be a really powerful thing. But
Can I ask you, is that why you're here? Because when I look down the list of things that they do here and the opportunities you do and the different sort of apprenticeship opportunities here, were you thinking about yourself and your brother? Was that spectrum there that you could see?
What drives me to do what I do is seeing the different people I've known as I've grown up and the different educational routes and the value that we place on that. And I think society values my maths degree more than it does my brother's carpentry qualifications, but actually he's brought as much to society as I have.
You used a really interesting phrase there. I need some bookshelves, right? And at the moment, I don't care about your maths degree. I actually want your brother.
And he's used his skills that he learned way more. I've never done a Bromwich contour since I finished the second year of my course.
You used a really interesting phrase there, which was kind of the middle class aspiration kind of thing. And it's something I've said in Parliament before, that often I think as politicians we're quite guilty of imposing our aspirations on other people. And I've quite often said, you know, if I've got a young lad who's 13 or 14 and his dad's a mechanic, and he wants to be a mechanic, and he's desperate to go and work in his dad's business and be a mechanic, why are we telling him he needs to go to university and do X?
Yeah.
Why are we not just helping him to be a mechanic? And if that means that actually we need to step in earlier, we need to go when he's 11 or 12 or 13 and he's desperate to do this thing and he wants to go and do it, to help him to do it.
And then pick them up and say, yeah, great, be a mechanic, but why not be a really great mechanic? And why not be a creative mechanic that's helping us actually take our businesses further forward? We want to have the skills to go into to a local business and help them become more productive, win more business, grow their company, offer more local jobs. If we can do that, then that helps take Mansfield, Ashfield and places like
I'd like to say something about it, because it's absolutely right, Ben. I had a friend at school, Darren, and from the age of about 13, he never came to school. He was always wagging it, and he was never there, always getting in trouble. He's got no interest in school whatsoever. He was always up the farm, messing about on tractors, stripping engines, you know, getting his hands dirty. And he was a bit of a nuisance at school, but he liked using his hands. He's now got his own garage, business, successful business, big house, kids are at university, and he was getting in trouble all the time. Now, we should have taken him out of school and put him on some sort of vocational training. I said, you know what, lad, you're showing some initiative. You know, he weren't that good at English and maths, but he was really intelligent with his hands. And if we do more of that and take these young people out of school and give them that training and give them that focus and show them there's a clear pathway to what they want to achieve, I think we've sort of cracked it.
Will, can I bring you in, because you work at the LEP here and your role is to look at what is the future for this area, what is the strategy you're going to do and engage with young people here?
Yeah, thanks, Esther. I just wanted to come in immediately on the point we've just been talking about around aspiration. And I think one of the issues is for young people in education at the minute is there's almost a tyranny of choice. There are so many options with A-levels, T-levels, apprenticeships, and actually some of the role of those of us involved in the education system is to make it clear, make it obvious to the young people what their choices are, and not, as Ben said, not to force them down particular routes, but to let them know that the routes are there so they can make their own choices about what's appropriate for them. Now, I just wanted to pick up something we talked about earlier on about curriculum, and I think it's a great point. I think I'm not going to get into the politics of changing the national curriculum, but I think what businesses can really help to do is to get involved with their schools and shape the curriculum. I think back to my physics lessons at school, and I hated them. I didn't understand why I did physics, because no one ever said, if you want to be an engineer, you need to know how to use a ticker-tape machine to measure the speed of a ball dropping from 10 feet in the air. I didn't get that. And I think the more we can get businesses in saying, actually, this is why you're doing French or history or PE or whatever it is, you know, it opens up that
I think you're spot on. I think that relevance to education is key. And we talked about white working class, and I actually think they're very savvy. And they might be thinking of a career and earning a few bob and getting married and going on holiday and having a car. So there is no relevance to this education. You're actually delaying my life. I could be cracking on with something else, and I don't think we're engaging well enough with pupils who I bet you are very bright and very able. You're just boring them in the classroom to some degree, and they don't know the relevance of it. I'm going to bring Brendan in here because he is, or was, I should say, a teacher before he became the MP for Bassett Law. And what about you? When you look back, what Will just said there, businesses going in, working with teachers, looking at the relevance of courses, is that something you feel you would have done? Have you come into politics because you thought maybe there was something lacking there in education?
Yeah, I mean, it's the way you present it to people. Again, I mean, I'll give us an example as MPs in Parliament. We were talking about the culture of things earlier. You know, a lot of new MPs all of a sudden coming down to Parliament. A lot had never even been to London before, probably, and it was a completely different environment, and that's quite intimidating. But there were quite a lot of us, thankfully, and you kind of got that there. Now, I went to Nottingham Trent University. I was the first in my family to go again, and there was never really that sort of university culture that I was used to. I didn't have a clue what it was like. Because I was in my home city, it was almost like an extension of going to college in many ways. And I think if I was going away to somewhere like Oxford, I would have found that incredibly, you know, I would have been like Bambi in headlights kind of thing. But then when I finished my degree, I always thought one of my issues was I don't know what to do with it now. And it's that idea of the direction. You don't have the connections for it. You're not quite sure where you're going. And a lot of my friends, you know, they trained as brickies and sparkies and plumbers and did incredibly well for themselves, as many did on the estate. And I think, you know, I never really remembered when I was at school that we had people coming in telling us those routes to go into those things, because as we say, it's almost this kind of snobbery in that you would build yourself up, and that meant doing A-levels, that meant doing other things. And this was the probably mid to late 90s. And I think there's a lot that's changed with that. And we've realized that actually we have this huge gap in society where we're having to bring people, you know, in with the skills that we're not developing ourselves anymore, that we actually have on our doorstep that provide really good jobs and so on. But we're not selling that to people. We're not showing it, because we've probably spent the last 20 odd years telling people that, oh, actually, you know, you should aspire to something, when actually, you know, some of these people have made tremendous success for themselves going into engineering or setting up their businesses, employing other people. And we need to show people, and we need to show them that it's actually happening in places like Mansfield or in Sutton, in Ashfield, or in Worksop, or wherever it is. So I think it's the sales pitch really that we need to work on as much as anything. And then after that, actually showing them that the opportunities are here and you can do it, and you can do it in your own town.
In a way, though, I'm not sure that's absolutely right, because we have no trouble filling those courses. Our engineering courses are round. Our construction courses are round full.
Yeah.
I think part of it is once we've got them, really pushing them on and giving them reasons to set their sights high. I think part of it is about getting some of our brighter kids to want to do the more vocational things. And our funding system and the way we have a quasi-market economy in education really detracts that. I can tell you my student target for 16 to 18 year olds is 2,911. Why do I know that? Because it's really important to me. If I recruit more than that, my life's easy, relatively. If I get less than that, I've got a problem. I start having to worry about how I can pay all my staff. And that's the same for every leader in education. So schools have a vested interest in persuading their students to stay on in their sixth form so they stay viable, whether that's the right thing for the kids or not. I have a vested interest in persuading students to come here and do my courses, whether it's the right thing for them or not. Now, our professional ethos, I hope, drives us to do the right thing. But once times get tough, actually, we don't always make those right judgments. Much better if we're all focused on just getting the right students on the right courses to take them in the right place. There are a whole bunch of young people here with grades C's and B's at GCSE, or whatever the numbers are these days, forgive me, 4s and 5s at GCSE who are on A-level programs who would be much better off taking forward a vocational path, inspired by some of the things that we're doing with local businesses to forge themselves a program, because they'll end up doing their A-levels, doing okay, going to an okay course at an okay university, never coming back here, never bringing their skills back to Mansfield and doing an okay job somewhere like Nottingham, Derby or Sheffield. If they came here, did a really strong vocational course supported by local businesses, they stay in the area, they develop their skills here, they forge their future in places like Mansfield. That's some of the drivers that are distorting and disadvantaging places like Mansfield, because it ends up pushing people into our cities.
And would you say the FE sector generally has kind of had almost a Cinderella status in that sense academically, that compared to schools? And in the future, really, what we're looking at is probably taking FE a bit more seriously and making sure that this is actually a really big part of the picture.
It is, and we have a moment, because we have a Secretary of State at the moment who is talking a really good language for us, and I think believes that our sector has a really important part to play, and let's hope he can deliver that. And you know, we've seen some signs that things are happening. You know, we've just had some capital money for the first time in almost my entire time in FE. So you know, I think we're starting to understand that, and I think if we can create a partnership between government and colleges rather than this transactional one that we've had ever since I've been in the sector, we can really start to make a difference. So we're not driven by earning our crust. We're driven by doing the right thing.
And I think, Andrew, you've talked about, and this is something I think us politicians can take back, that tick box exercise that schools are doing maybe to keep you on for A level, rather than maybe seeing what you need to do because they've got to do it for funding or for their figures. And we need to change that because I think that has led to a distortion over many, many years. That has led to the snobbery that university is better than something that's technical or vocational. Germany has always had that right and valued its technicians as much as those who are academic, as much as those who went into a career. And I would say for a long period of time, I would never have known what my teacher thought politically or any other way, and they wouldn't have tried to indoctrinate me. I am now hearing that people aren't teaching you what you need to do. They're overly indoctrinating you. It's gone political. People will say it's gone to the left. It's forcing ideas on you. And I think that needs to be removed from the whole educational system. A left-leaning bias or an educational bias in the whole of the education platform. I don't know. I mean, have you found that? Are you mindful of that?
I think we're mindful. I think some teachers, particularly in some subjects, history, politics, it's a challenge often because teachers often do have strong views. I mean, I've sat in quite a few of those lessons since I've been here. I think teachers work really hard to try and keep their personal views separate. And often veer the other way.
And the reason I bring that up, when we talk again about white working class lads maybe being disengaged, I'm thinking about that. Look, what was the vote in Mansfield? What was the vote in Ashfield? It was a very big Brexit vote. And I'm thinking to myself, are people thinking, well, I don't want to be engaged in a classroom if somebody doesn't think like me, they doesn't vote like me. And you know what? They're now telling me what it is and then questioning my beliefs or my family's beliefs. And that's why I think you need to remove all of that from the classroom.
I personally don't think it's a big issue. And I think teachers, certainly in post-16, risk a significant backlash from their students if they try and do that. You've heard Lewis talk, you've got bright young people in these classrooms, and they would very quickly push back if they felt someone was trying to indoctrinate them. So, certainly post-16, I can't talk for how that would work in a school. But I think we have a real opportunity here in Mansfield. When I arrived 18 months or so ago, there was this big thing about 30% of our local jobs are going to be lost to automation over the next few years. Now that's a really depressing thing, but actually what we have is some really big businesses in and around here investing money. And actually if we embrace that technology, if we say, well, actually, okay, so if automation's coming to Mansfield Big Store, well, let's be the best skilled people at looking after automation kit. So the LEP has just given us a chunk of money. Thank you. We'll be launching a dedicated program in automation.
Comes from the government, that, Andrew.
It comes from the government. So thanks for the government to giving the LEP the money and the LEP to giving the money to us.
I've got to claim it, sorry.
It comes from, so thanks to me for paying my taxes. Anyway, let's not go around that in this loop. But no, so we've got an opportunity to say to the young people of Mansfield, actually, Amazon are here. Amazon are going to be offering 1,800 jobs. Of those, quite a few are going to be high-skilled technical jobs. Let's win them. I met the IT director of a big international retail company when I first arrived here, and he said to me, if we want low-paid people to do basic jobs, we come to Mansfield. If we want technicians, we go to Germany or America. And my mission is actually they come to Mansfield for all of those, or Ashfield, or the local area, Tracy. That's what we want to do. That we are known as a place that actually delivers highly skilled young people. And if that then brings in companies to invest, or if that enables our existing businesses to embrace new technologies, to become more productive, to pay higher wages, then more of our bright young people will stay here.
And Claire, you talk very much about that, saying some of the children from your school wouldn't be graduating until about 2036. And what were those jobs? And what would automation do to the area and AI do to the area? And were we thinking far enough in advance to be able to have jobs for those young kids?
And I think, again, politics and MPs need to embrace this. The average life expectancy of a Secretary of State is 18 months, and you end up flip-flopping from left to right. And actually what we need is a long-term plan for education, absolutely. But also, as educators, we need to be brave and bold for our young people. And just because we did it when we were at school or when we were at university doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's right for the future. And I think looking at what young people are going to need in an ever-increasing, rapidly changing society are those really important skills around what it means to be human. So resilience is going to be so important. You know, the pace of change is massive. We're in the 4th Industrial Revolution at the moment. You know, you go to Sainsbury's, you go to Morrison's, you go to your local supermarket, and there are less and less checkiers, you know, scan and go. You go to Mansfield, you go to McDonald's, you put it in a machine. If you go to kind of Phoenix in America, all of their McDonald's, it's 100% automated. So we do need to grasp this because it's coming whether or not we like it or not.
But I would say the software for those McDonald's touchscores is written here in Mansfield.
Absolutely.
Yes. Round of applause for Mansfield.
And the people that install them are also from Mansfield. Yeah.
Is that why you picked that example, so that we could all cheer the brilliance of Mansfield?
But we need to make sure that we're providing the courses for these young people that are progressive and that allow them for transferable skills. But that also goes to what you're teaching in primary, what you're teaching in secondary, and what you're teaching at post-16. You know, very much kind of like the traditional degrees that you're studying will become defunct. I know you were talking about bricklaying and you were talking about mechanics. Well, the government have made it quite clear around electric cars. So in terms of mechanics, actually you need to rethink that a little bit. And in terms of bricklaying, actually you might need to think a little bit longer term than that with regards to 3D printed houses and things like that. So a lot of it is about looking at kind of international and global trends, having a look at what other countries are doing. And for us to be braver and bolder for what our young people can do, because they are amazing. And, you know, being at kind of like Brunts and Bramble and Beach, which is my special school, they amaze me every single day with the things that they can do. And we really need to encourage this creativity within our curriculum, because actually this is the types of things that are going to progress us as a society, because with increased automation, things that machines can't do is be creative for the future.
And Alex, you wanted to, and I know you work with a lot of different charities, and it is about that, what humans bring to the table. Are we developing those? People call them soft skills. I'd probably call them essential skills. Are we developing those? And how do we do that with young children to get them ready for work, for technical skills, for university, whatever it is they choose, not their teacher, but they choose to do?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to listen to the debate, actually, and I almost feel in some ways, I'm thinking I've got the corner piece to the jigsaw puzzle sat here. And so by way of background for people, Alex, I'm Mansfield born and bred. My family are all Shirebrook originally, and we moved over here. I went to Brunts. There you go. And I'm entrepreneur by day, and then in terms of passion and why I'm here, I volunteer as a trustee on multiple charities. So the Inspire and Achieve Foundation, where we're talking to neat young people, so those not in education, employment or training, who've fallen out of the system. Youth United Foundation, which is all around opportunities for young people in disadvantaged areas. And I also volunteer as Chief Commissioner of England for the Scouts as well. So for me, what I massively see is the importance of soft skills for young people. And to put a little bit of context around that as well, you take recently a study by the University of Edinburgh. They did a lifelong study of over 10,000 people. And what they didn't expect to find as a result of this study was that those who had been in Scouts and Guides during their life were actually 15% better in terms of mental health outcomes, and the resilience that they got was actually propelling them forward. Now, another one that I know is a social mobility report that came out in 2019 actually said that the soft skills that young people were getting were actually making that difference for them in terms of staying in school, in terms of attainment, and that was coming out of, they were looking specifically there at extracurricular activities. Now we have a problem because the report also turned around and said it's actually our most economically disadvantaged young people who aren't getting the opportunities for those extracurricular activities as well. So for me, if I was throwing open that a debate, I would be saying we've got to do one of two things, or a combination of both. How are we going to get these soft skills into young people, which is going to help them in the classroom to have the confidence to speak up, which is going to help them with the life skills, even if they've got that academic attainment, to actually be job ready, to use some of the terms that have been used previously. And for me, we've got to either start taking that seriously in the classroom and start saying, actually, soft skills are as important to teachers' literacy and numeracy, and particularly if somebody wants to go down a vocational route, and also particularly if I talk in a post-COVID world as well, but it was equally important before, how do we make sure that all young people are getting opportunities to do these extracurricular activities? Because we know statistically we're going to have better mental health from it, and we're going to get better attainment from it.
I know, Claire, you've said there should be a human right for young people from deprived areas, that they do certain things to make sure they have a rounded knowledge and maybe tap in and explore them as a person.
So we've been doing international research around high-performing educational institutions, and one of the things that was really interesting was the grammar style education, and we had the opportunity to go and visit some grammar schools. And I think one of the things that was really interesting, actually, the quality of teaching and learning, the pedagogy, is actually, it's a bit rubbish. But what the controversially,
I love the pedagogy next to it's a bit
Ben,
rubbish. I love the juxtaposition of that.
But one of the things that's really, really interesting about the grammar schools is the cultural capital that goes on there and the opportunities that those young people have. So we've got Bramble Academy, which is a primary school in Mansfield Woodhouse, with nearly 80% free school meals, 40% third generation unemployment, and 25% of my parents are illiterate. Now, we need to provide those opportunities for those young people to have experiences that they may not necessarily do. So one of the things that we've created is a curriculum that's very, very flexible, that builds in these opportunities for these young people. So it's a fundamental right that my children get to go to the theatre. So we build that in because actually we think that that's important, you know, to have a sleepover. And I know that sounds really, really silly, but at my special school, those children are all bussed in and they don't get to experience what it's like to have a sleepover. So we create that for them in school. So what we do is we have a look at these kind of like fundamental cornerstones that we believe are really important for our young people, and we build them into the curriculum. They're called pledges. And actually it was based on some research from the National Trust. They did a book, kind of like 50 things to do before you're 11 3/4, and it was stuff that you take for granted, you know, building a den and things like that, but that is part of our curriculum. We actually teach that.
But isn't that what the NCS was there to do? That was sort of David Cameron's idea of having that a month away, working together, young kids doing outward bound courses and doing some career stuff. Emma, don't you work with Notts County Football Club here, and you are the NCS representative?
Yeah, so...
Hang on a sec, you might need the mic.
You really. I've been sat here listening to everybody's opinions and everything like that, and I feel like we are the people that hold that extra jigsaw puzzle. I feel like NCS is that bridging gap between finishing GCSEs and starting higher education and further education, and the amount of times that I've been sat on the phone on a Sunday night trying to convince a young person to come on our programme, because I know it's going to be the best thing for that young person to come and build their confidence and build their aspirations, and help them learn them soft skills that they really need to go on to get jobs and things like that. The amount of times that we've seen CVs and they've got the best grades ever and it's amazing and we really want that person in, but they come into an interview and they can't even string a sentence together because they haven't got them public speaking skills that they need. And that's what NCS is there to offer young people. It's not just a summer programme, it's something that can continue into their further life. We can offer jobs in NCS for young people. Lewis is a clear example. He's one of our NCS graduates. He's our shining star in terms of he's built that confidence and he's able to project his voice and he's able to go on to Oxford, which is amazing. So yeah, we really want to. I'm Mansfield based, went to Garibaldi, and I was one of them people, the first person to go to uni within my family, and I just feel like we really do need that bridging gap of NCS to continue, and that government funding obviously to support that, to make sure that that happens.
This is a really interesting discussion here, and I know probably Scouts and youth services will have a view on that. And I think when David Cameron kind of thought up NCS, it was a rite of passage that every child was supposed to go through, and everyone at 16 would go and do it. And I've been to visit loads of times, and I think the work that happens with the kids that are there is brilliant, and I've seen some of them do really well. The challenge, I suppose, is probably because David Cameron left and then didn't have the same emphasis after that, is it never became that thing that everybody did, and as a result, it's kind of like, I was there a few weeks ago and we talked it through then, in terms of who do you reach and how targeted is that at the kids that need it the most, and also in terms of the funding, because then, a massive amount of young people's budget goes into NCS, and I'm sure, Tracy in particular probably say, I've got youth services that I need that funding for, so it's a really interesting challenge. So I think it does fantastic work with the kids that are there, and then the question is how do you get more kids, or how do you get kids into other bits? How do you fund other bits as well as doing that?
But I think what we've all agreed on in one way or another is that developing of confidence of young people, of allowing them to be themselves and say, whether it's technical training, going for a job, going for an apprenticeship, going to university, we should be nourishing the child, not forcing them down an avenue that they should be doing. Tracy's nodding there. I think she wants to come in.
Well, I'm County Councillor, as you know, with responsibility for children and young people, and my particular areas of focus are looked after children and youth services. So I'm more than happy to sort of slug it out for the budget for NCS money. As you know, youth services aren't a statutory function at the council. If you can do anything down south to make sure that they become such, I would be your number one fans, because to me, the work that goes on there, also the work that goes on at NCS and Scouts and all of the different voluntary groups, it's so valuable outside mainstream education. You are not simply educated in a classroom.
No, I hear that. I mean, and more than that, adult services as well. I mean, most young people look forward to their 18th birthday with a sense of joy and rite of passage and, big party, except at the moment, small party. But for looked after children, it is a cliff edge. And they suddenly get to this point where the support that children's services have been provided, which, is not perfect and is underfunded in itself, but is good and keeps those people straight, suddenly that all falls away, and they approach their 18th birthday with utter dread, and some of the mental health issues and some of the problems that we have here around that. So supporting that horrible cliff edge at 18 where young people move from children's services into adult and so much falls away. Anything we could, and we're working really closely with the council.
I want to bring in Amanda here, because we haven't. It's been very quiet. Unlike, well, I thought you could have come in at any time. And I want to
going to everybody.
Well, but I wanted to bring you, because you're somebody who knows a lot as well about sort of mental health and supporting people, and you've set up your own charity, and that was in memory of your brother. I think I'm right.
Well, cousin.
Sorry. And somebody who's definitely trod their own path in life, decided not to go to university, went straight into work, you're now Minister for Science. Listening to what's been said today, where would you want to add sort of the emphasis?
Well, I don't know where to start, because you started at one place and it's gone to whole, and I would love to comment on everything, but there's so many different things. Today, by the way, is Suicide Prevention Day, and it's really important, I think, that we acknowledge that, and you're right, but I can talk about mental health later. I guess for me, one of the things I was just thinking, my daughter probably has broken the mould here, went to University of Leicester, has moved to Mansfield to work for Ben. So I don't know what can I say. I don't know. That is that aspiration working for you, Ben. And thoroughly enjoys it as well, I have to say. But I think for me, there's lots of things. I did Brownie Guides for 20 years. I've been a school governor for 20 years, still am a school governor. And there are lots and lots of things that I'm hearing in terms of all the things we're talking about, work ready, talking about aspiration, so many different topics that we could talk about. And I honestly don't know where to start and what would be the most useful. But I guess for me, if I had to say something that I think that we need to do and have a responsibility is around confidence. It is around aspiration. And it's around believing in yourself. And you said, I chose not to go to university. Actually, I didn't. It wasn't a choice. I just didn't think I could. And I think that's one of the things that actually I look back and I think, would I have gone? I don't know, but I didn't believe that I could at that particular moment. And had I had the confidence, I came from a completely dysfunctional family, which is why I know all about mental health, but had I had that confidence, I might have done something very differently. Would I have ended up a science minister? Who knows? All of education, for me, is giving people confidence and also that hook that inspires you to go on and do things. And, thankfully, I don't know what it is, I look at you, Lee, and you inspire me. You inspire me every day as we walk down those corridors, because you remain true to yourself. But it's about saying to everybody, believe in yourself and you can do it. But I don't think we always do that.
There's a really interesting point there, Amanda, around excluded kids. One of the big challenges I think in our education system is kids who drop out of it and what happens to those kids. And that's, kids in care, but kids in things like alternative provision and pupil referral units that some people refer to as like the waiting kind of room for jail, effectively, where, you've got county gangs, drug dealers hanging around outside the gates to recruit these kids. You've got, almost getting written off, kind of isolation rooms and all that kind of stuff for kids who have dropped out of school. And it might just be that those kids needed a hug. It might just be that those kids needed to find that thing in their educational kind of life that engaged them and that was exciting. But then when we send them off to something else, there doesn't seem to be a system of getting them back. And how, there's a piece there around youth work, a piece there around, trying to reintegrate kids back into the kind of mainstream schooling. At the minute, almost all, a huge proportion of those PRUs in particular are rated outstanding. And yet the outcomes for the kids who go to them are awful. And I wonder how we get to that kind of juxtaposition where we're saying these are great, but actually loads of those kids end up in jail.
Sorry, I just want to point to Sophie, who's here as well, because I have to say Sophie. So Sophie didn't go to university, opted not to, has a twin sister who did. But Sophie is absolutely amazing. She's 21, the most senior person in my office, started with me when she was 20. And I think what you have to do is recognise talent in people. Because honestly, Sophie, you're amazing. And I want to say that publicly because you are. But everybody, and people here, all of us, we have a responsibility to draw out that amazing. I just feel as I wanted to say that.
And I feel like then Sophie is a part of a real life experiment as a twin. One went one way, one went the other. And where are they going to be in 20 years' time?
Can you come back in 15 years and we'll do an assessment of how that,
I certainly was.
Well, look, first, thank you for coming to West Nottinghamshire College. It's been brilliant to be part of this conversation. And I'm thrilled that our two local MPs are very firmly with us on our journey and invested in our community and want to support us. So thank you to you. It's been a fascinating conversation. I'm not even going to begin to try to sum it up because it's been so wide-ranging. We've got two corners to our jigsaw. Hopefully we can be some of the centrepieces, not that I'm greedy, in taking the community forward. But I'm hugely optimistic for the future for Mansfield and Ashfield. I think we've got some significant challenges, but there is a real thirst locally to make the most of the opportunities we've got, with hopefully a college that's committed to doing absolutely everything we can to play our part in that, a top of the range university fully invested in supporting our community. As I've said, MPs, local authorities that are well and truly behind us, and businesses that want to work with us to create opportunities for our young people. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. I'm loving my time here. Long may it last, and look forward to building relationships with all of you. I'm sorry for those that I haven't mentioned in that conversation. Great relationship with Aspire and Achieve, picking up some of those students for whom college isn't right. Thanks to LEP, I've already done that once. And hopefully we can build some strong relationships with our schools. I think that's something I haven't really got stuck into yet, and I'm keen to do that as well. But really excited. Been a great debate, given me plenty to think about. Keep challenging us. We want to do better, and your challenge to us really helps us to do that. And thanks for coming. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Cabinet Chat. Is there a problem with education attainment for white working class boys?
All of us know that there's been a gap that started to emerge over not just over the last decade, but much longer than that. And it's how we start addressing that, how we start driving attainment in all schools, especially in those areas where historically there's been lower educational attainment, and making sure that young people, whatever their background, actually have the real opportunities. But how you do that is about driving standards up in schools, but all schools right across the country.
When schools and colleges are fighting for bums on seats, how will you ensure we do what's right for the pupils?
It should be about what is right for the child, what is going to be the best route for them. So often people have viewed a university route as maybe a default route. And what we've got to make sure there's a whole range of options. Whether that is when a child, when they've completed their GCSEs, as to what's the best option for them, whether what's the best option for them when they get to 18, as to whether that is to go down a degree route, whether that is to go down a sort of a technical vocational qualification. But we've got to lay out all the options.
What is the government doing to promote choice in education at every stage of life?
So often we've created a situation where people think that, university equals success. And of course, university is an option and it's a route that works incredibly well for so many people. But 50% of our young people don't go on to university. And we need to be talking about that 50% as much as the 50% of people that do go on to university. And there is a reality. There's a reality that, if you do a higher technical qualification, a level 4 or 5 qualification, it will often pave the way to actually much better career options and opportunities in life. Youngsters who are doing what's sort of an A-level equivalent apprenticeship by their mid-20s will be earning more than someone going to a non-Russell Group university. It really does pave the way to great opportunities and a great chance to sort of build a brilliant career. And I think we've got to be hammering that message home continuously. It isn't a binary choice of university equals success, not going to university sort of doesn't bring that same success. Rather, actually, if choosing the right options at 18, sometimes the best options for people are actually doing those higher technical qualifications.
What are we doing to ensure there is political impartiality in schools, colleges and universities?
You're right to say that we've got to ensure political impartiality right across the spectrum. All organisations, educational organisations are state funded, and you've got to ensure that you do have that impartiality, and you've got to make sure there's a broad spectrum of views. And I'm sure you've spoken about it, I've spoken about it. The importance of freedom of speech and making sure people aren't no platformed. A very good friend of ours in terms of Amber Rudd, who I think we'd both agree is a very fair, decent and reasonable, good person. The idea that someone like Amber was being no platformed at Oxford University, is completely crazy and certainly something that we shouldn't be tolerating. So we've got to make sure we have that freedom of speech in universities, and actually, you know, voices are heard, whether, you know, whatever background they come from.
What is our party doing now to ensure there is social mobility in this country?
Well, the best way that we can ensure that there's social mobility in the country is giving young people the best tools to succeed, the best way to level up, the best way to drive out disparity is making sure people have the very best education, because that is what will open the doors. Yes, it is about making sure people have a range of options at 18. It's not just a default option about going to university, but it's making sure that we have brilliant further education colleges. It's making sure that we have brilliant higher technical vocational qualifications, so there's a broad range. But equally, it's making sure that we're really driving standards at school, you know, from the very earliest of years, making sure, you know, I was sort of in Ashfield sort of before the pandemic, and actually, you know, visiting a primary school there and actually seeing the amazing work that was being doing, and actually an incredibly strong focus on standards, an incredibly strong focus on teaching quality, actually was making this one of you know, it wasn't in one of the richest communities, very much a former mining community, you know, very much a white working class community, but actually it was doing incredibly well, because you had a laser-like focus of, you know, the academy trust, the head teacher, the whole teaching staff really focused on driving standards up.
Many head teachers say it's difficult to get rid of failing teachers. Will government introduce something to make it easier to sack teachers who are not up to the job?
Yeah, well, Esther, I think you've probably seen a revolution over the last 10 years in terms of accountability and the fact that actually, you know, how we're driving performance in schools, how head teachers are held accountable, but how the whole system, the whole school is held accountable as well. But we've got to continuously move forward with that. It's also making sure that teachers train correctly and they're given the right tools at the job. The early career framework is actually bolting on effectively 2 years of extra training, extra support, so we get teachers into schools with the right skill sets, with the right talent, and making sure that head teachers have got that supply of brilliant teachers that are going to really make a difference. Because as you probably remember, and I certainly remember, you know, it's the teacher at the front of a class that can make such a difference to all of us.
Will government champion these white working class boys who find themselves at the bottom of all the education tables at the moment?
Absolutely, but the best way of doing that, so often the Labour message is about, you know, what Labour wants to do is dumb down in education. What we want to do is we want to be driving standards up in education. That is how you give the best service in terms of young people from whatever background they are, whatever, you know, whether they're white working class, whether they're from an ethnic minority community, but driving up standards in education, making sure that there's real rigour there, and actually that is what will open up opportunities for young people, and that is what our focus has got to be.
Welcome to Blue Collar Conversations, live at the Blue Boar in Westminster. And you know what? I've got two of Westminster's finest with me, Lee Anderson and Ben Bradley. And this is the part of the programme where we take your opinions and your views, and you've been writing in all day, emailing in all day. And the question that's got you all fired up is the Conservative Party the party of the working class? And I'm just going to read a couple of comments out. Barker Choco, absolutely 100%, certainly. Pixie Mixie, Labour is now full of aggressive anti-British woke rubbish. Ubiquitous chaos, this has been actually true since the 1980s and 90s. Of course, the Conservative Party is the party of the working people. Iron Duke 228, Labour was hijacked by the liberal elite decades ago. It should be called the Liberal Elite Party. Dave Madley, 758, I don't agree with Esther on all of her politics. Well, if you don't agree with me, you don't agree with Lee and Ben either. But what he did say is, but I totally agree with what you're saying now. The unions don't want the people to be involved in their agenda. They've got their own. So we've got Linda Hodgson too, saying the exact same thing, brought up in a Labour family, but she saw the right way. And who have we got this? Mikey 20, Labour was infiltrated years ago by left-wing intellectuals who only wanted power and didn't give a fig about the working class. So lots of people saying that. But Lee, I've got to start with you, because what a journey you have been on. You worked down the pits, you then worked for a Labour MP, and you are now a Conservative MP. I mean, that's a journey and a half. So what was it? What was it that made you change? Why come over to the Tory side? Was it Brexit? Was it other things?
Well, so I first joined the Labour Party in 1983, just before the miners' strike, and I went through all that whole journey with my family, which was very interesting to say the least. But fast forward 30 odd years, and I found myself working in a Labour MP's office, and I thought that was the route to fixing things in society. But it became very, very clear, working in that MP's office, that they were more interested in talking about problems in Palestine than they were with problems in Ashfield, such as poverty. And I thought, you know, this is not right. And it's right what you say. The Labour Party have been taken over by these left-wing intellectuals who've got nothing in common with the working classes in places like Ashfield and Mansfield. And I thought, you know, this is not right. And at the time, I sort of was friends with Ben. We got elected on Ashfield Council at the same time. And I thought, you know what, it's not that much different to me. So it's Ben Bradley's fault. I'm now the MP for Ashfield. I might be a few years older than Ben, but you know, I think I'm catching him up.
But you're really sort of keen on social mobility. And how do we help young boys go back, whatever, 30, 40 years for you?
Yeah.
Somebody who says, yes, the pits is there and I see it and my dad works down the coal mine, but I'd like to do something else. How do we get that social mobility in society? Is it about grammar schools? Is it about discipline? Is it about role models?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned grammar schools, Esther, because when I was at school, at junior school in the 70s, we was always told, you know, go to grammar school, take 11 plus, do well, go to grammar school, and you don't have to go out pit with your dad. And that was a clear message. We didn't know what the 11 plus was. We didn't know. We just knew it was an exam. I didn't know what a grammar school was. But what I did know, and what we all knew, was that that was the way out of a life of toil, if you like. But unfortunately, a couple of years before I was due to take 11 plus, that was taken away. The Labour government at the time phased it out. So just a few years ago, as I keep saying, I was down the pit with my dad. So that sort of, it left one door open for me, if you like. It closed another door, grammar school and university and all those other things that come with it. I ended up down the pit. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my time working down the pit and I made some great friends. And actually, it was probably a better education for me than going to university. Because them men down the pit, what they taught me was that they were decent, hard-working blokes who did an incredibly difficult job to provide for their families. They weren't some rabid left-wing socialists who wanted to bring the country down or go on strike or any of this nonsense. They were just decent, hard-working people with strong conservative values.
And that's what people say, the salt of the earth kind of people who actually make sure that the country functions and is working sort of day in, day out. And Ben, you have made it a mission, some might say a crusade, to talk about white working class boys in schools. For a lot of people, that's a taboo subject. So why did you want to talk about that, bring it to the fore?
It's hugely important. I mean, touching on what you said before, I heard on the doorsteps loads of times through both of these last two elections, you know, Labour's not for working people, it's for them that don't work, Duck. It's only for those, you know, they want to keep people down and keep people dependent on the state, so they'll vote Labour. And I think that's, you know, a real perception out there on those doorsteps. But, you know, white working class kids, if you look through the stats, and boys in particular are so far behind now when it comes to academic attainment. And we've got, it seems like, different support, different positive action, as they call it, under the Equalities Act, for almost every other group in society, except these young lads, who actually are half as likely to go to university as other free school meals kids. A fraction of 13% go to university compared to 60% of BME kids. You know, the statistics are stark. It's not all about uni at all, but we certainly need to be supporting these young lads who more often than not are dropping out of school with no qualifications and really struggling in terms of life chances.
And we're doing some polls live with the Express, and two of those questions that we've been asking: is it wrong that discussing the problem faced by white working class youth has become a taboo subject? So is it wrong it's become a taboo subject? And at the moment people are saying yes, it's wrong it's become an taboo subject by 89%. Only 11% think the other way. And the other question we're asking is, should government stop trying to push young people towards university and instead focus more on training them for the jobs market? And 96% of people say, you know, they agree with that. That's what we should be doing. So this pushing people down that university route, whether it's right or not, and that's what we were debating tonight, weren't we? The fact that that seemed to be the be-all and end-all, and it shouldn't be.
So, you know, white working class boys, and Ben's quite right to keep bringing this up, you know, they're very useful when it comes to working down the pit, and they're very useful when it comes to fighting a war. But, you know, in peacetime, when the opportunities aren't there, we seem to forget about white working class boys, and that actually, and I think all parties over the years have let these lads down. And it's our job now as new MPs, such as myself and Ben, in areas like Ashfield and Mansfield, where there is a problem with white working class boys. It's up to us now to step up to the plate and work with training providers, work with industry, work with government to try and provide a clear pathway so they can see a path, they can see the opportunities.
And should government look at it from the other point of view? It's the system that's failing these lads. Is it that they actually want to get on with a job, crack on with life, so that learning and practically doing things at the same time would be the best route for them? They actually find it quite dull being talked at in a classroom. They want to be out there doing stuff, being active. The mind works in a different way. Shouldn't we be changing things in Parliament and government, Ben?
Yeah, we absolutely should. They say the definition of madness is to try the same thing over and over again and expect different results. We know that 1 in 5 kids leave school with no qualifications, yet we get them to resit GCSE maths and English over and over and over until they never do it. But we don't change the system. We don't recognise that we need to do something different for those kids. And frankly, we rarely talk about culture when it comes to white working class communities or you know, outside of a BME discussion, but there is a working class culture, and it's different to other places. It's different to London, and we've never quite engaged with, you know, what is it that these lads, it's not just lads, it's kids across the board, what is it they want to do, what is their aspiration? We're very guilty sometimes of imposing our own aspirations of university and whatever onto people who don't necessarily want that.
And I think, you know, there shouldn't be a taboo subject when you've raised the issues that actually the group that is failing on pretty much every statistic is white working class boys. If we truly want a cohesive country, a country that we're all working as best we can together, we've got to support those who are failing.
Absolutely, and you know, the statistics don't lie. We've heard in the debate, you know, the importance of that stuff outside of academia. You know, where are these kids from the most disadvantaged backgrounds getting their cultural capital, as was the phrase that was used? You know, what experiences do they have in life that make them able to have the confidence and the skills and the ability to go out into the world and feel like they can do something positive? Because if all they get through their childhood, you know, if parents haven't got a huge amount of education, if they're not being driven at home to engage with these things, if school is boring, what else have they got other than feeling like, I've been to do my GCSEs and I've not done very well, I'm a bit of a failure? What else are we giving them that actually picks up on their talents and their abilities? And sometimes I think the answer is it's not enough.
We've got Alex Waddington has written in, and he says, and he picks up a different point, how can you ensure that working class talent have the access to devices and data, and they don't get left behind in this digital divide, and households that don't have multiple sort of iPads if they're going to be taught at home?
Absolutely right. I mean, we're living in a digital age, and you know, Ben touched on it early about talent in this country, and the Prime Minister is quite right as well when he says that talent is spread evenly across the UK, but opportunities are not. And we have to make sure that we provide the opportunities. And IT and the digital age is something I think traditionally in working class areas like mine and Ben's, we've lagged behind a little bit. And, you know, I go into schools now and they're still a little bit behind. And that's a problem that we've got to solve down here in Westminster, to make sure that our children, our young people, our colleges, our schools have all the IT equipment that they need. And especially in this online age now, we need to make sure that kids can access that from home as well.
I was talking to a teacher this week who told me from literally the most disadvantaged school in the entire county of Nottinghamshire, who said, we've been given loads of laptops, but parents won't take them home because they don't want the responsibility of looking after them. They'll get nicked, they'll get sold, they can't use them. 25% of kids, parents at this school are illiterate. So how are they going to use laptops? And I think sometimes, you know, we talk about the kids that are benefiting from better education and attainment-wise, we're doing far better. But there's this group at the bottom who are still really struggling that we really need to recognise.
So we need to make sure in our infrastructure that we get the broadband across to everybody. But at the same time, when we've done blue-collar conversations on our podcast about what the kids need to be doing now, they say get them back into school for the reasons you're talking about then. If the parents at home can't help them, if they're both out working or if they haven't maybe got a great education themselves, we need children back in school getting the education that they so rightly deserve. Now I've got Dennis Williams here, and he said, I came from a pit village in Yorkshire. At age 18 I should have voted Labour. Everybody I knew voted Labour. I didn't. I voted Conservative, have done all my life. I didn't in 2017, but I did again in 2019 because he believed in democracy, the vote of the people, and that was obviously the Brexit vote.
Yeah, I think that sort of resonates with my area. If you look at the referendum result in 2016 and then compare that with the general election result last December, if you look area by area and by constituency, it sort of replicates itself. So I knew in December, with knocking in Mansfield, knocking in Ashfield, I knew that result was coming. We could see it coming. I expected a 100 majority actually, but I think the Brexit party sort of robbed us of a few seats up in the north, northwest, northeast. So yeah, I mean it's not rocket science. You know, people were fed up. 4 years of stalemate, and at the end of the day, it was get Brexit done and vote Conservative. And it's nothing what I did. I was very fortunate. I rode a perfect political storm.
And when we had that, literally that sort of political earthquake, when we had that red wall collapse and now a blue wall, many say we've lent you the vote, Conservative Party. You must now do that levelling up agenda, everything we're talking about, engaging with all these different regions. Lee, would you ever then cross the floor back the other way?
Listen, Esther, I was in an abusive relationship whilst I was in the Labour Party. Nothing I did was ever good enough. And the Conservative Party welcomed me with open arms. I found people that I actually got on with, that I agreed with, like Ben. I felt at home. And when I sit on those green benches in Parliament over there, I feel like I'm with my friends, people that think the same as me and people that want the same for our country. So there is no way on God's earth I would ever go back to the Labour Party.
And there's a key line that you always use, and it's about opportunities.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, opportunities is the way out of poverty. I mean, the Labour Party seem to think that to get people out of poverty, you've got to increase benefits, you've got to increase subsidies on the wages to tax credits and things like that. That's not the way out of poverty. The way out of poverty is to give somebody a better job or better training or better opportunities. I think even Oxfam get it right, don't they? Give the man a fish. That's no good. You've got to teach the man how to fish to get him out of poverty. So that would be my message. It's a simple one.
And I think all blue-collar Conservatives think that it is about opportunities. How do we enable you to succeed? What is it you want to do in life? And success is a good word. It means different things to different people, but how do you support you, your family, and get on in life? We've talked about this a lot, Ben.
It's absolutely right, and I think Lee touches on it. Teach a man to fish as opposed to hand over. I got slated a few weeks ago for saying you don't fix poverties with freebies, but you don't. It's a short-term sticking plaster, isn't it? And you're covering the cracks. What we actually need to do is look at that structural issue that's preventing, as the PM says, that equality from being spread equally around the country. And we do that, in my view, and that's why the debate focused on it tonight, through education, through skills, and helping these young guys to have that aspiration and potential.
And that focus there, which lots of people have written in about, is you shouldn't be pushing every child to a university. They should be doing technical skills, apprenticeships, doing something different, because everybody is different. How do you appeal to their talent?
Yeah, and the Secretary of State is getting this right at the minute, in fairness, and I think a big focus around FE and vocational technical learning at the minute, as opposed to university, where we know the outcomes increasingly aren't delivering on the promises that we're making to these young guys heading off to uni, thinking it's going to be, you know, better jobs and more money, and it just isn't for so many of them. But there are so many out there with other talents and other where we've supported them in the right direction, and they'll do well.
And that's another issue at the moment. University, the pupils who've gone to university are saying, what is this all about? They're now asking, in this age of COVID, are we getting value for money if we're doing it online? I see here now could be a massive change in that university education. Will people want to go there? Will they say, actually, value for money, what's the outcomes? Could we get it cheaper online through an open university degree paying £1,000 rather than £9,500? Well,
I think you're right, Esther. I think COVID has changed a lot of things. It's like a big reset button, really. COVID is. We're all going to behave differently after, whether it's education, whether it's work, whether it's training, whether it's politics. So we're all going to change, and I think that's a good point. University people will think twice now, especially those in the first year that's been robbed a little bit of the time. So, yeah, I think, you know, moving forward, as a government, we need to make sure that we spot the potential in young people. We do it at football. Football scouts do it. They pick the best footballers and then send them to a football academy. Why can't we do that with the best scientists or the best teachers or the best physicians? We should be able to do that.
And that's what we're looking to do here. That's why we've come live today. That's why we're doing our Blue Collar Conservatism Conference. Well, that's it for us in this live section tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with the conference. We're out in Sedgefield. Interestingly now, Conservative seat, Paul Howell's seat. It was Tony Blair's, but it all changed in the December 2019 election. And we will be live at the end of the day. The debate tomorrow is Made in the UK and Levelling Up. Do you think we should be supporting each other by buying British and making sure things are made in the UK? Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow and we want to hear from you. So email us at opinion@bluecollarconservatism.co.uk. Blue Collar Conservatism is all about turning politics on its head and taking politics to the people.